We're slowly about to start. So our first talk for the day is Premshree Pillai's talk about building a scalable system for shipping package tracking. So let's welcome Premshree.
Добрый день. Thank you all for coming on a Sunday morning. I know it's not easy. I appreciate it. I'm really happy to be here. I'm privileged to be amongst a wonderful crowd and a lot of amazing speakers that you saw yesterday. I am going to be talking to you about building a scalable system on tracking, specifically shipping tracking. My name is Premshree, and I work in the shipping team at Etsy. Before Etsy, I worked for several years at Yahoo, building a lot of different projects. So I know one of my coworkers spoke yesterday, but I was just curious, how many of you have heard about Etsy? Oh, quite a few. So I should cut off a few slides now. Kidding. But so Etsy is a marketplace where buyers and sellers from all over the world connect to buy and sell things. And our mission is to reimagine commerce in ways that more sustainable and better for the world. This is a market that my girlfriend and I went to not long ago in Cleveland, Ohio. There were vendors that sold handcrafted leather goods. I know Croatia has a culture of a lot of handcrafted products. I saw there's a lot of stores that sell handcrafted shoes in Zagreb, which I found interesting. There were a few stores, vendors here that were selling vintage products, and there was a lot of food, of course. This is Sai-Kung in Hong Kong. This is another Sunday market where vendors from all over Hong Kong congregate and sell handcrafted bags. There were a lot of people selling jams and things that are mostly food related. I actually went here to meet an Etsy seller. What's interesting about both these venues is that a lot of these people are people who sell in markets, but they also have shops on Etsy. Anyone know where this is? Yep. Yeah, it's Malikplatz Tavanu, which I went to yesterday actually during the lunch break, and it was very cool. There's no one selling like bags or products, but there was a lot of organic food being sold here, which I thought was very interesting. I got to speak with a lot of these people, and it was lovely. So in many ways, Etsy is like the online market that brings about all these disparate Sunday markets or markets that are growing all over the world that happen physically, and it's happening online. So on Etsy, this is just a random curation of products that you find on Etsy. As you can see, there's a lot of jewelry, there's a lot of art. There's apparently, I don't know if you can see, there's a cat house, which is interesting. I've never heard about a cat house. I love pottery, and during one of my searches, this is what the search results look like. These beautiful plates come from Scottsdale, Arizona. These rustic-looking plates came from Andover, Massachusetts, and this beautiful coffee cup from Lefkis, Greece. To me, what's interesting about this is these are all small producers, artisans, or small businesses that are creating these with a lot of passion. And to be able to see that in one place, in one marketplace, is fascinating. So Etsy has around 1 million sellers worldwide. We have 26 million active listings at any given point, and 40 million members, that's sellers and buyers. So I thought I should share a little bit about my team. My coworker Michelle actually yesterday told me, I don't think most people would know why there is a shipping team. What does a shipping team do? So I thought I'll just share a couple minutes talking about what we do. So this is a photo of part of my team. It's actually at an offsite we had. So we don't actually go about shipping packages, But in this particular offsite, what we did was we were pretending to be sellers and buyers on Etsy. So we shipped packages with random objects to each other to see how it might be to be a seller on Etsy and also the buyer, to be able to feel how it might be to actually ship an item on Etsy, to actually take it, go to the post office, print a label, and see where sellers might have problems. So we work on a bunch of different projects. One of this is shipping notification, which is basically what a seller would send once they have shipped a package. We allow sellers to, so like one of the things we noticed was how sellers want to print a label on Sunday, but they actually want to ship it the next day, obviously, because the post office is closed. So you can schedule a notification in advance. You can say, hey, I'm shipping my package, but send this notification to the seller on Monday or Tuesday. So that's one thing we work on. We have a tool called Postage, which is basically, it's mostly US only right now, but it's for sellers to be able to figure out how much it might cost to ship from one part of from wherever they are to wherever the buyer might be. It looks very simple, and in some ways it is, but it's incredibly complex how postal systems work with all the different types of packages, the dimensions, the different speeds at which you can send packages. This is the shipping tracking page, which is going to be the focus of the talk today. You all probably know when you buy a package and you want to track where it is, it looks something like this. We'll talk about this more. And shipping labels. In the US, the United States Postal Service is called USPS, United States Postal Service. That's the National Postal Service. And in the US, sellers can print shipping labels from the Etsy interface directly. There are many advantages to this. Part of it being the shipping rates can be cheaper, but also it means a seamless process for the sellers. We also allow sellers in Canada to print using Canada Post. That's another way sellers can print labels. So with tracking, the simple question you're trying to answer is, where is my package? Currently at Etsy, at any given time, there are around 200,000 packages in transit. There's 125,000 packages that are out for delivery at any given time. And we support over 150 shipping carriers. And these are numbers for any given hour for a day, so not for the whole day. I don't have exact numbers for the day, but through the day, obviously there's going to be packages that are in transit that end up going out for delivery, and out for delivery that actually gets delivered. So shipping carriers, we allow support all the common carriers, obviously, like FedEx, DHL. USPS is the national postal carrier for the United States. And apologies if I pronounce this wrong, but Irbatska Pochta. So let's dive in. So for the talk, we're concerned with how do we actually get to display this information here. So we, at the very basic level, we have a table that has all the tracking information that gets stored. There's a lot more fields than this in our actual system that we store, but some of these fields are what we're concerned with. Shop ID, for example. Shop ID is the shop that gets tied to the, from which the tracking is getting sent. Tracking ID is a unique identifier for the table. Tracking state is the state in which the package is at any given time. So it could be out for delivery, in transit, whatever it is. Tracking code is a unique code provided by the shipping carrier. Can everyone see the slides well? Yeah. Last access date and queue, we'll talk about that in a bit. So note that in this, the last date for this particular package is delivered, and that's what the table we just saw maps to. You'll see that there are more than one states in all, obviously. So the last date is delivered, Now, in order to store all of these different states, so we have delivered, we have, before that you have out for delivery, and all these random shipping carrier specific events like dispatch to sort facility. These get stored in a table called tracking events. So when I talk through my slides, I'm going to only talk about the last displayed event, but when you want to dig in more about the different events for that particular package, we store all of that information in a different table. Shipping APIs. So how do we get results from a carrier? How do we ask USPS, hey, what's the status for my package? And I'm very happy to report that most carriers actually do support a RESTful interface like this. It's very simple. It's kind of shocking that this even exists, but it does. So you can see this is a simple GET request to see the status for this particular tracking number. I have obfuscated the tracking code so that you don't stalk anyone. And amazingly, as much as a lot of people here may not like XML, it's far better than what it could be. So this is the result you get back from USPS. You can see it returns to you the tracking nodes. So for each tracking detail or tracking event that happened, it returns a unique node with the location, with state, the time the event occurred. Some carriers don't always return to you every event that occurred. It may just return to you the latest event. But in our system, we would capture that and notice the difference and just store whatever is latest in addition to what we already have. If you pay attention to these event names, so this one says arrived at USPS Urgent Facility. These are unique to shipping carriers. So FedEx will not have an arrived at USPS Urgent Facility. DHL may have something completely different, which makes it difficult. So that's where we come to tracking states. If you see here, like I said before, there are all these different tracking states, but pay attention to these. These are more standard. So irrespective of whether you have an event that says you arrived at USPS Urgent Facility, something like in transit, out for delivery, shipped is what buyers and sellers typically care about. So we map carrier-specific events to one of these events that we define internally. So these are the states that we define internally for consistency across all shipping carriers. So there's an info received. Info received is an event that happens when a shipping carrier receives information about a package, but doesn't have the package yet. Package received is when the shipping carrier has the package but doesn't have any movement on the shipping, and so on. There are a few more events, but these are what we primarily map to. So state map. So like I said, we map all carrier-specific events to one of these events. So for example, for USPS, this is for the United States Postal Service, we map info received. We map acceptance processed at USPS Origin Facility to info received, and this is the same state for FedEx. Similarly, for in transit, we have a lot of these events dispatched from USPS sort facility. There's an amusing one there, local holiday will attempt delivery the next working day. And what's interesting about these is that carriers can add events at random. Sometimes, I don't know how and why or what their process of thinking about this is, but they would randomly decide to add another event. They might sometimes add a period at the end. That completely fucks up our math. There is no way for us to very intelligently map unknown events, but we have code that detects an unknown event, and then we manually go and update our map. So at the simplest way we can get tracking information. So here I'm talking about how do I fetch all the rows that need updating at any given time. The simplest way to do that is select star from. Anyone know what the problem with this is? What's that? I can't hear you. Can you say? Let me get back to the problems actually. Apparently I have another slide in there. So the question mark there is basically a placeholder to indicate the age for which we want to get tracking. So for example, I want to say, give me all rows that need updating that hasn't been updated in the past 15 minutes. So the question mark there is, time minus 15. You could probably you'd probably tune that to something that's more efficient for your system. The basic architecture looks like this. There's a cron. A cron runs every 5 minutes or so. It queries the database with that SQL saying, hey, get me all rows that need updating, that hasn't been updated in 15 minutes, 30 minutes. We make requests to USPS, FedEx, DHL, all these different shipping carriers through our API. We get return results back and put it back in the database. The problem, obviously, is that size. Select star is going to return a lot of rows. It's not okay. And you can fix that by adding a limit. But the problem with having a limit is you end up having stragglers. And by stragglers, I mean, every time the cron runs and you say select star from tracking's limit 10, there's going to be a bunch of rows that never actually get updated. And so then you end up having to have a whole different system to update these stragglers. So that's not going to work. So we have sharding in place to optimize this a little bit further. How many of you are familiar with sharding? Oh, quite a few. Cool. That's awesome. So sharding is just a way to partition data for it to be more efficient when we access it. I'll just quickly walk you through sharding. So on Etsy we have shop pages. So this is like a shop homepage, for example. This is a page for all the orders purchased by a seller, and purchased from a seller, sorry. This is my profile page on Etsy. I'm a user, and these are my purchases. So in sharding, you basically have like a index table where you have a map between something like a unique key, like a user ID and shard ID. And then you have a database that has more information about that user. So the point here is very tall and narrow table that has very limited information. And then you have a wide table with more information. So this is how it might look like. So when you want to fetch information about a user, you get the shard ID from the index, and then you go to the specific database to get more information about the user. And you can do that similarly for shops as well. So we can refine our system now by saying select star from trackings where shard equal to blah, and last access date is less than whatever frequency you decide. So it looks slightly better now when instead of querying one database, you query the different shards. So when the cron runs, the cron can make a unique request to each of those shards, and then you get the response back from the API, and you feed it back to the database. So we can make this even better with the notion of queue. It's not a real queue. I think when you say queue, people think, oh, ActiveMQ or 0MQ, one of those mechanisms, but this is really a fake queue. If you notice, in the schema, I had a column called queue, and what this is basically we assign a different value for depending on the tracking state for each of those tracking rows. So we have queue 3 day, queue 1 day, queue 3 hour. These are all basically indicative of the length in which we are okay for it to go stale. So if we want to assign, if we want to say that it's okay that this particular row hasn't been updated in 3 days, we assign it a 3-day queue. And we have a queue map, so a package that's in state info receipt doesn't need to be updated that often, so we map it to a 3-day queue, but a package that's out for delivery needs to be updated very, very frequently, so we assign it to the 1-hour queue. And these queue maps can be changed, of course. The queue age is, again, indicating how long we're okay for it to go stale before we have to do an update to that particular row. So now our query looks even better because now we can select start from tracking using the shard, the queue, and the last access date. At this point now we are efficient enough that we don't need to worry too much, because each time we make this query per shard, we end up getting back around 100, 200 results maybe. So we can go a long time before to scale. We can scale a lot before we need to think about a different solution. And of course, we use an asynchronous mechanism. We use Gearman. You can use whatever you want. So with that improvement in place, this is what the architecture looks like. Whenever a client makes a request to get the tracking status, we make a request to our internal API that queries an index table. We get the data from the index table and query the specific shard to get information about the tracking state. On the left-hand side, what you see is the asynchronous part of it. We have a cron that's running every 5 minutes that makes a request to a Gearman manager. Each Gearman manager spawns processes for each shard and queue combination. So you do, for each shard and queue, fire off a Gearman worker. And each worker then does the SQL that you just saw. Makes requests to the API, gets back results, and leaves it back to the database. So at this point, oops, sorry. That was not meant to be seen. So at this point, just to summarize what we talked about, we have an API that makes requests to all these different shipping providers. We have a state map that maps shipping carrier specific events to internally defined events. We do sharding, and using a combination of cron and fake queuing, we're able to optimize it to a point where it works fairly well for us. That's all I got. Thank you very much. I'm not sure I have time for questions. I think I ran out.
Yes, you can.
Do I have?
Yeah. 2 questions.
Does anyone have? Yes.
Hi. So, question: How much human resources in your development team is dedicated to maintaining communication with shipping APIs, updating when they break? Is it like a job for one person full time, 2 people, 1 person?
So at this point, our infrastructure is at a point where we don't have someone working on it full time. We also use, it's fascinating. There's a lot of carriers that randomly keep popping up, and it's not very possible to keep up with that. There is, so we actually, for a lot of international carriers, we use a third-party API called aftership.com. They're very good about adding new providers very quickly, but for most of the major providers, we have our own API. But we don't have a full-time resource to answer your question.
Any more questions?
I wonder how you shard, by what key, what's your strategy on sharding?
Say it again?
What's your strategy on sharding? How do you shard?
That's a whole discussion, but we have a pretty well baked in system, and primarily all our data is sharded either by a shop ID or user ID at Etsy. But as for like how it actually works, I mean, the standard way to do it would be to do some sort of modulo operator. But we do something far more complicated than I'm aware right now. But we also have ways to, I think every day or every few days, we do automatic shard rebalancing. And we also do move data from one shard to the other. In order to do that, we have, like, for each shard, we have 2 sides. Right now we have 2 sides, so we take one side off, and then we do make the move, and then we switch it back on. I don't know if that answers your question, but I mean, sure.
Okay, thank you.
I'll be around.